Hello and welcome to the 21st Century Writer Podcast, a podcast devoted to helping you, a self-published author, develop the mindset for flourishing in the new world of self-publishing. My name is Diane Patterson, and with me is my co-host.
I'm Hannah Steenbach, a German author and coach.
I guess I should have mentioned that I was a novelist and blogger. Oh, well, that was all from memory. And it's another beautiful Friday here, except I don't know that because I am trapped inside my house.
It's actually a beautiful Friday here. A week of rain has stopped. It's still cool. You can see me wear my old hoodie.
What is rain? What do you mean by rain? Is that's a cold water that falls from the sky? We don't get that here. So
yeah, we've been having a week of it. I'm glad that's over because I'm really sick and tired of walking to work in the rain.
Well, there are many predictions, and I'm assuming that this is what these guys do for a living. So maybe it's more than predictions. There's a weather development that comes by every couple of years called El Nino, which is a weather front that comes in and usually brings a lot of rain, and then it disappears again. Anyhow, this year is supposed to be a super El Nino with mass flooding and huge storms, and our infrastructure, which is sort of broken down a bit with this extended drought, is going to get swamped with all of this rain. So
it's actually a fascinating weather pattern because it originates off the coast of Peru in the South Pacific, and it is started by an upwelling of cold water, and it totally shifts the wind and precipitation pattern around the entire Pacific. It is absolutely fascinating. If you ever want to do science fiction with weird weather, research El Nino, which is the one end of the swing, and there's La Nina, which is the other end of the whole swing that happens in that area. And El Nino brings wet weather to the west coast of the United States. It brings drought conditions in Australia. It influences the monsoon rains in India. It is absolutely, utterly fascinating to look at that weather pattern. There are few things that have such a global impact.
And this year is supposed to be a gigantic one.
And I was in California in the school year of 82, 83. That was my exchange year. And unbeknownst to most, that was also a pretty bad El Nino year. That was before they had discovered the pattern.
Huh.
And we had, it was like we had a rainstorm coming through every 3 days. Houses were washed away on the shore. A lot of cliffs crashed into the sea. It was a winter of havoc, really. But of course, I mean, the rain was so necessary. Nobody really wanted to complain except for those two.
We'd had some very bad droughts during the 70s too. So I'm sure that they were very happy about the rain. Yeah, but I mean, and if the rain doesn't show up this winter, if for some reason we get one of these weather fronts that holds El Nino off again, boy, we're going to have an unpleasant year ahead of us.
Oh, yeah.
So it's either we can have torrential downpours, hopefully refilling all of our reservoirs and giving us snow in the Sierras, but causing havoc and breaking down things that are not ready for it. Or,
well, if you do own houses, now is the time to check the gutters while it's still dry.
Oh God, that's a good point. I should put that on the list for things to get done.
It's time to see how your driveway drains. It's that kind of stuff, because we pretty much know it's going to come, and it's going to go wild in end October, beginning of November. That's when it's starting to hit.
Well, when we remodeled our house, we built a lot of that in. In fact, our driveway is not a driveway; it's a series of open stones.
Yeah.
So which is nice. However, our house is at the bottom of a hill. So when the rains really come, there's several feet of water. It's very hard to get into a car. Can get into whatever car is in the driveway.
Well,
yeah.
That's difficult. If you could if there's any place the water can go further downhill, you can dig a trench to guide it there. But if there isn't,
and all of the not gutters. What do you call them? Sewer drains.
Yes.
Are all full up with leaves and sticks and stuff.
Yes.
So they're all blocked. So
that would be a good thing to clean and clear before El Nino comes around.
I think that's something that has to be done on a civic-wide level. It's not going to be just us.
No, but if you have a chance, just do yours and convince a couple of neighbors to do theirs. Things might be easier.
So,
but that's the kind of preparation that
Well, that's part of what I have been doing this week is preparing the rest of the year, making a list of things that need to get done because I've been planning our Christmas holiday, and since that's taking some preparation and planning now. And so now I've been trying to figure back what I'm going to be doing the rest of the year. Because, once Christmas comes around, there ain't nothing happening.
No, that's the way it goes. And the weeks leading up to Christmas, at least in the US, are weeks full of meetings and celebrations anyway. Starting with, what is it, Thanksgiving? Or? Yeah,
I have a mental model of the year. Starts in September, ends in June. There's this other block that goes June to September. But around, say, November 1st, right after Halloween, to about the second week of January, is kind of this like rubber band that just kind of shoots you around, and you miss the whole thing, and you're not quite sure what happened. We do. It's like endless eating and drinking and not getting anything done. I don't know if that's because we don't have enough holidays the rest of the year.
Possibly.
But there's Sundance. The Sundance Film Festival happens in mid-January, and I know nothing happens in Hollywood until that's over. There's a huge book fair. I think the Frankfurt Book Fair is in January.
No, the Frankfurt one is in October.
There's something that happens in January. That I remember when I was querying agents, I didn't even bother starting until the end of January because I knew nobody was going to be back at their desks until then.
Must be something else because there's the Frankfurt Book Fair is in October. I know that for certain. And there's the Leipzig Book Fair, but that's in March. So
it also seems like mid-January would be a terrible time to have a fair in Germany.
Well, winters are not that bad, but yeah.
They're a bunch colder than any winter we've had here. Okay, maybe not in the Northeast. Although I like to, one of those fun factoids that you find out when you're a kid that sticks with you is that Rome is north of New York. If you look at a globe, Rome is north of New York. It's true. You could look it up. That's your fun factoid for the day, kids.
Okay, I hope this recorded because you froze on me, but
you also froze on me. I was talking about my fun factoids.
All right. Yeah, I've been looking at the rest of the year. It's a little scary to know that July is over already. Mentally, I'm still kind of in May, to be honest.
Mentally, I'm in about 2010. Like, what do you mean I'm in the middle of 2015 already? How did that happen? Okay, before we get to the rest of the year, let's talk about how the week went.
All right.
You want to go first?
Well, I did a little better this week. There was still the memorial to go through for my friend, and I got a couple of pictures, and they sent me, which I really appreciate. They actually sent me the file for the flyer they created for his memorial service, and they quoted me in it, which was also rather nice. And yesterday, his nick disappeared from my chat room, so I think that is rather final. And I'm doing a lot better. I actually managed to write again yesterday, this morning, and a couple of writing soon, but I'm glad I'm getting back into it. This is, I didn't expect it to throw me that much, but on the other hand, it was one of my longest, best, closest friends, and I'm giving myself permission to breathe. I really very consciously decided not to push myself and not to send away that emotion. I think as authors, especially, we work with emotions. We try to evoke emotion in our readers. And it's not a fun emotion, for heaven's sake, but to allow myself to feel this pain will also allow me to put it into my stories. So that's the big takeaway for me. I mean, I've been grieving before, but it's really been a while since I lost a very important person in my life, and I'm grateful it doesn't happen more often.
Oh, yeah.
But it really reminded me that this is part of life, and that we need to appreciate the relationships we have with people and let them know that we do. Which thankfully my friend did know, so that's good. But yeah, I'm gradually getting back into the groove, and I got 2 reviews. Woo, so.
Oh wow, that's pretty. I have not been checking my reviews recently. Like I said, I've been.
Check it every day either. I just kind of happen to look at my books again. I do once in a while. I just go to my author page and say, and I'm trying to reach enough reviews to take a next step in promoting and promoting it. So, and there are places that demand a minimum number of reviews before you can.
Yes.
So that's the work being cut out for me right now.
Yeah.
on the marketing area. So my week has been working to get those reviews, asking around for more, getting back into writing, and well, remembering my friend.
Yeah.
So how's your week been?
How my week? If you're watching the video, I'll try to describe this for those of you listening to the audio. You may notice that the background behind me looks a little different. This is because I am sitting at my sitting desk instead of standing at my treadmill desk, which is behind me. You may notice the beautiful turn of the century, that would be turn of the previous century, French train poster, which is by my desk, which really classes up the joint. And then behind me is my whiteboard, where I have been scribbling things and doing really well at adding in a thing to my novel. And then this week, I walk on my treadmill desk about 12,000 steps a day, or I'll walk downtown to do stuff, walk back. I haven't been running recently, and my toe really hurt. My big toe really hurt. And I said, how would I sprain my toe? All I do is walk on a treadmill desk. So I'm looking up sprained toe versus broken toe, which is apparently a very popular thing to look up. Nobody else knows whether you've sprained your toe or broken your toe. Apparently the 2 things to look for are a bruise, bleeding under the skin, and of course the famous bone poking through the skin. I didn't have either of those. So I go to the podiatrist thinking that they're going to give me a splint on my toe or something. And she said, you have a skin infection called cellulitis, and boy, is it good that you came in here before it spread everywhere and possibly got into the joint. Okay, great. Oh yeah, and I was looking this up. apparently it's a skin infection, and I have no cuts or anything on my toes, so they have no idea how it got in there. But boy, is it nasty, and it's painful. Painful to the point where it woke me up one night, with like seizing and burning. I'm on antibiotics now. I have to sit, and in fact, my foot should be elevated. I've got it a little elevated under the desk, but probably not enough. Boom. The second half of the week, just totally, because maybe with constant pain, it's the kind of thing that you can learn to factor out, filter out when you're doing stuff. But when it just starts, and periodically you're starting to do something, and then searing pain right through your toe. So yeah, about 4,000 or 5,000 words this week, way less than I was planning on, particularly with all the planning out I'd been doing.
Yeah.
But I mentioned to the doctor that I was thinking about taking a few days in the Southland next week, and she goes, "Can you cancel that?" Really? I've never had a doctor tell me to cancel something before. Yeah. So that's my week.
Yeah, that sounds like a serious thing. So
yeah. So I'm kind of, annoyed because last week I got in my own way, being really upset at the internet and realizing that it was just ruining my my concentration and my focus. And boy, has giving up 50 or 60% of what I used to do on the internet, that has just been overdue. I'm glad I did that. But then this week I'm like, great, now I've filtered out the internet. Now I can get to work. And it's like, boom, now you're sitting on your butt with your foot up, and make sure you take those antibiotics every 6 hours. So if I look a little sleepy, it's because I actually had to set the alarm to get up and take a pill. Better than not having the antibiotics. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
It's better than not having the antibiotics.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad for modern medicine, even though it failed my friend. But yes, I'm glad we do have it.
People go, when what era would you have preferred to live in? I'm like, right here, right now. There is no time on earth that I would rather have been a woman in. Holy crap, no.
Yeah, I have a friend who is a lot into Ren Fair stuff and reenacting, and he got himself all these clothes for middle ages, and they used to have a place at a early middle-aged castle, which is not at all like the castles you think of when you think of Germany. But
most people think of Mad King Ludwig, right?
They do, and they think of huge stone walls and towers and everything. Earlier on, most of those castles actually were smaller towers on a hill, and with a wall around it, also an earth wall, and they had a palisade on top of the earth wall. I forgot the English name for it, but that used to be the kind of castle they built around the year 1000 to like 1200, 1300, and only then they started building these large walls of rock. Before that, it was mostly earth walls, and so he's there doing stuff, playing his lute. And people tell him, wasn't it great living back then? And he looks them in the eye and says, you know what? I'm so grateful. I can go home tonight, take a bath, and sleep in a clean bed.
By yourself or with the partner of your choice. Because if you read about sleeping arrangements before about 1700, yeah, no thank you. Pass.
Not fun. And I mean, let's not even talk about the vermin. I mean, it's just.
Oh yeah, you think bed bugs are a problem? Holy moly! Thank you very much. Oh, and I mean, I actually, when I was doing web searches on this cellulitis, which I had literally never heard of, I'm like, is that like cellulite? She's looking at me like, no. Are you calling my toe fat? So I'm looking it up, and they're like, herbal remedies for cellulitis. Rub tea tree oil on the affected place. And I'm like, no, you need an immediate diet of antibiotics to get rid of this. Yeah. This is painful, and it will spread all over your body. And if it gets into your joints, you are in deep trouble. No, tea tree oil is not going to cut it. And I'm actually kind of annoyed that somebody would post that. Show me the clinical trials on that one. I actually started doing some research on basically on my mother's life, being born into Depression era Ireland, moving to the U.S. You know, what would have been going on at that time? And I'm like, I can't imagine. You know, when was penicillin largely available? You know, when were
in the 1930s?
Yeah.
1940s.
Stuff that we take that, you know, I'm not even sure it was widely available until the end of World War II.
Yeah.
No, there is no time on earth. I do not look back at any time in history and go, gosh, I really missed a trick not being born then. Nope, right here, right now.
I mean, it would be awesome to be able to travel there and sort of be a tourist and be invisible.
But then you read about these plagues. There was evidently one before the Black Plague that took out 100 million people. Yeah. And there wasn't even there was only a couple 100 million people on the planet. I'm like, no, pass.
Yeah. Maybe send a spy camera or something. That would be kind of cool.
Exactly. Why are there no science fiction stories about sending drones to the past?
No, seriously. I mean, people really get all romantic and full of these wonderful ideas. You know, how lovely to live in the Stone Ages. No, you don't want to do that. I mean, seriously, you do not want to live in the Stone Ages. Life expectancy was like 30 years.
I always look at women who say that.
Yeah.
And wonder, are you aware of what modern technology has done for you? Are you aware of what women had to do at certain times of the month? Even 40, 50 years ago?
And let alone giving birth. Just imagine a child. I mean, to go into those churches in England, all these old cathedrals, and you look at the gravestones. And what you see is a typical pattern is you have the husband and you have a wife. And on the wife's side, you have all the daughters, and on the husband's side, you have all the sons. And there's like 6 to 10 children. And then he remarried because his wife died in childbirth at the age of 28, and he got another wife that was 10 years younger, and she gave him another 5 kids before she died in childbirth. One every year. Because there was
I lived in Los Angeles, and I had I was getting treatment at Cedars-Sinai, which is a famous hospital. And I was scared to death having a baby. I'm like, there's a person inside of me that's about to come out.
Yeah.
People were like, no, I want a natural at-home thing. No, don't you understand what horrible things are going to go on? Yeah, no, I have no nostalgia. And you just have to look at the social aspects of it. I remember my mom telling me in the 60s that she couldn't write checks at the supermarket. She had to have my father sign them because women couldn't have their own checking accounts.
Yeah.
And I remember when it was a big thing for women to get their own credit cards.
Here in Germany, I think until the 70s, a woman needed her husband's permission to take a job. That was the law. It was only stuck down in the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be that you could fire a woman if there were a man who needed the job because he had a family to support.
And that kind of thinking is still there in some brains.
Yeah.
And they would still prefer to fire a woman because how could it be that a woman earns the income of a whole family? I mean, yeah. Yeah, I'm really glad. I mean, there's a lot of backlash going on right now. I'm really watching that. And there's a rather famous and infamous feminist magazine in Germany that I subscribe to. And they talk about this backlash, and they talk about it's less pronounced in Germany. I mean, we still have abortion clinics. We have contraceptives available for everyone. We just legalized this morning after pill. It's now available in pharmacies rather than having to get a prescription for it. So I think things are not as, let me say, I don't even know how to describe it. The backlash isn't at full strength here yet. I hope it won't ever get there.
Well, I know that abortion wasn't legal when I was there. There was a big court case about a woman crossing the border into the Netherlands or something. But that they expected a big change to happen after the reunification.
I actually have to look it up. I think it is legal now until the 3rd month, but you need. I never had to find out, but you need to have some counseling, and you need to have some. I think you need to go to at least one counseling place and wait 24 hours before you take the decision or something. But it's still better than in Texas. So it's legal now.
Diane will now censor herself on the subject of things that are better than Texas.
Well, I don't want to slight Texas, but yeah, that's. I have friends living there.
Yeah, no, I do too. And they're like, no, it's not all like that. And I'm like, enough of it's like that it's hard to see it any other way. When the people in charge are all like that.
Yeah. And it's all this. I mean, you may ask, what are they talking about? This is a mindset podcast, but seriously, being observant like that, being aware of society, being aware of the differences in society, I believe this awareness and this insight that you get from being aware of these things will show in your stories. Even if I write fantasy, I create a society and I create rules in it, and knowing how things work in different parts of this world makes it easier to create a system that works in a foreign world, in a completely different world. And I think if you write contemporary mystery, this is all fodder for the imagination. All these changes and how people react to it, and how the young generation grows up not knowing differently. People look rather ignorant.
I told you about the story that I read. I can't remember where this was, but a kid wrote a story that was set in 1970 or 1971, and he mentions the phone the guy has in the car. And I said, I have some news for you. Didn't happen that way. Had no clue.
Yeah.
I actually just read a gigantic fantasy novel this week as part of I am going to read more, even if it's not in the mystery genre, called The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, Liu. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And it's I would say Chinese flavored, but not fantasy Han Empire or anything. Mm-hmm. And it's really a very large scale large, huge ambition. I mean, obviously, and this is, it was it's over there. I would go get it, but I can't. About various armies and changing political things in this fantasy world. And there are a few women characters in it, not very many. And they're pretty much either wives or women, women who've completely rejected the female role of this fantasy land. And it was really, I recommend it. It was really hard to get into, though. It was really hard to find a storyline to follow. It's on such a huge canvas that it took a while for all the pieces to sort of start moving into place for me. Where was I going with this?
Role of women.
Role of women, yes. And it was funny because right at the point where I was like, there are no female characters in this, he like introduces something from a female point of view, which it was kind of hilarious that it was almost 1-to-1. I really recommend it, though. It's a very ambitious, and apparently it's book 1. Like this is the intro to his world. I would love to know what it takes to do story world building for something on this scale. The whole history of each land, the history of the gods who are characters in this, the gods of this land. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you can only do that if you, wait, I don't touch on my teeth. Stupid fly. I think you really need to be aware of society and societies and history in order to create a new world on that scale. I have to admit, that's not what I like doing. I shy away from creating huge backgrounds. I prefer discovering them through my stories, which may be a bit lazy, but seriously, I used to do role playing. I used to read all these guidebooks and about gods and their avatars and where they roam and all that. And I was thinking, I just want to learn about the characters. I just want to read about the adventure. That's what I'm going to write. But I think if you want to make it believable, you need to be aware of what's going on in the world around you. You need to be aware.
Yeah, there was a tremendous amount of political research that went into this, military research. Yeah, this was not knocked out on a weekend. This was not. Yeah.
And then probably planned over half a decade or something.
The current book I'm reading is called Crooked by Austin Grossman, I think. I have to look that one up, but it's the story of why Richard Nixon did the Watergate break-in. Only it turns out to involve Cthulhu and space aliens and the history of black magic in American politics. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea if he's going to be able to pull this off, but boy, I am on board for this. So
that sounds hilarious.
Yeah, it's fantastic and he starts with a quote from a history book about the history of Watergate, saying no one has ever completely explained why they did the Watergate break-in, because Nixon was going to win in a rout in 1972. Why did they need to break into the Democratic headquarters? Yeah. So that was clearly the entire impetus for writing this book. So I'm very excited about this.
I love this kind of mindset. I think the greatest question you can ever ask yourself as author is, what if? What if there was something we don't know? What would happen if we put magic into this world, or someone, all these things, they all start with what if. And
well, for anything though.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. I forgot to close something. Yes, I did. Okay, that's got to go away. Well, that's true for any, it doesn't need to be just fantasy. Currently I've been reading a lot of fantasy because I read some article, I think it was IO9, saying fantasy novels coming out in July or something, and these were two of the books on it. So I said, okay, I'll read those. But it's true for anything. Like, as I mentioned on another podcast, which I will have the link to, one of the stories that inspired my book, Everybody Takes the Money, was actually a story that happened in Montana and I was reading all of these articles in the paper, I think it was Montana, God, was it Wyoming? Somewhere without an ocean, about a man who was a pillar of his community who used a money lending operation that he ran for drugs and hookers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it was like, if this could happen in Montana,
yes,
you know this is going on in LA. You know, there's just no question about it. So yeah, what if? And that's what everybody, you know, everybody goes, where do you get your ideas? Pick up the paper and ask, what if?
Yes. Yes.
And it doesn't need to be just the horrible stories in the paper. Of course, that's what sells, unfortunately. But, you know, try to find one of those dopey inspirational stories and ask what kind of story would lead to this kind of conclusion.
Well, I just read a story about panda bears pretending to be pregnant so they would get a better cage and they would get air conditioning and more food. So they simulate being pregnant and they get moved into better accommodation in Chinese breeding centers. So how in the world do panda bears do that? How in the world do they figure that out?
Sneaky.
So what if they are actually magicians sent from another world? Or they're aliens exploring our culture? I mean...
What if they're just much more highly intelligent than we've been giving them credit for? And they're like, okay, how do I get in on the fabulous Food Express?
So there's
Panda Express. Oh dear, I'm making food jokes now.
But their ideas just literally everywhere, and they don't have to be deep, and they don't have to be philosophical, and they don't have to be revolutionary. I think there's just stories everywhere that we can pick up and transform and tell. I love that.
So the rest of this year, speaking of stories, trying to keep this on topic. Let's see what kind of Friday we're doing here. I'm moving my foot around like I normally would, and it's like, no, you're supposed to keep it not moving around. So there's the book I'm trying to finish. God, I had so many ambitions for this year and have watched them all fly off. The book I'm trying to finish, and I have the zombie trilogy, and I have another book that I want to finish, but is going to take another 50 to 100,000 words. I've been wondering if I should take another look at the first two books of the zombie story and maybe move those into editing and just get ready to put those up. And maybe people will be interested in seeing the third one when it shows up.
Yeah, it's a good idea to start at least with two.
Yeah.
Just so people don't think it's a like we say in German, a one-day fly. There's the species of flies that just really truly lives a single day. They hatch and they live for a single day. So
that was a plot point in A Bug's Life.
Yes. I never saw that.
So yeah. Since I'm planning, let's see, I've got the trip next week. Oh my God, I'm almost out of laptop battery. I have the trip next week. I have the trip the week after that. I have 2 trips in November, and then there's the Christmas vacation.
Yeah.
And I am staying put in my house every moment that I can. besides those, because traveling is exhausting. I mean, it's fun, and I'm not going to say that I don't enjoy it. I do, but it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the rest of this year, I want to get this current book out. I want to get the zombie stories out, and I need to keep down my ambition. I think that would be enough for this year. So, how about you?
I had to move a publication date because I wasn't, and I'm still stuck in the Dragon Court thing, but I have a deadline, so in October I will publish the third part of my Dragon series.
Mm-hmm.
I also agreed to write an anthology for a short story for an anthology with the same deadline, so I have to finish that in September as well. And that's the one firm thing. I originally had planned to publish 4 books of my Dragon story because it's 4 books and then another 4 books, and it would have fitted perfectly to publish one every quarter, and it had a symmetry that really appealed to me, and I just couldn't do it. These things, it makes me feel like I'm not a good pro author, but I suppose these things just happen, and I do work a day job. I have my practice, my coaching practice, so self-care takes precedence over.
I really liked your blog post this week or a couple days ago, maybe it was yesterday, on overwhelm. Yes, that's me. And I think that's a mindset. Well, we could do a whole show on that. That it is a whole mindset of feeling overwhelmed. Absolutely. And I don't know how to keep, I've got plenty of help, but I still always feel like I'm 2 weeks behind and I can never catch up. Yeah,
and that's not a supportive feeling. So yeah. I'm giving myself permission to. I talked to my publishing partners, and I said, I feel really stressed out about the whole thing, and he said, why don't we move the publishing date? And I thought, oh God, I don't want to kill the symmetry. And on the other hand, it was like there was this calm descending on me by removing the pressure. And I thought, yeah, that's the sign you need to do this. And I said, okay, let's shift it from August to October. Give me the breathing space that I need. I've been working on this new series that nobody really knows about yet. I've been hinting at, but I just had a breakthrough in that, and it's turning more mysterious than I wanted it to. I just wanted it to be a nice romp, but figuring out the romance plot demands that I have catastrophes in there that threaten the relationship, and I'm creating these catastrophes now, which is more difficult than I thought, and more fun than I thought. So I'm working on that, but the plan is to finish all 3 stories that are around 20K each, and I will probably not publish them this year. I'm just giving myself the space to get them well done and publish them in a bunch next year and just have that. So
that's right. I'm on the hook for another short story for a friend's anthology as well.
So what I really want to do is I want to finish part 3 of the Dragon series, possibly write part 4 by the end of the year so I can release that early next year. Do the short story, which is going to take place in my fantasy world, but it's not. It's just going to be a side character having some fun, and it's going to be completely standalone, just set in the universe there. There's also a convention I'm going to because I'm the editor of a German anthology, and this is that originated in a writers group, and at that convention, that's where we have our annual writers group meeting. And so since I'm the editor, I'm responsible for presenting that book on that con and marketing it and telling the whole big story behind it. The Trail of Tears. Goodness. That was such
that actually refers to something in history, and
I know. Yeah, I shouldn't compare it to that. That was a terrible time. But that project really, really, really has history. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So in October, I'll take a couple of days off and go to that convention, which is it's we call it the Buch Con because it takes place in parallel to the big book fair in Frankfurt. It's in a place slightly south of Frankfurt.
Explains why you know when the Frankfurt Book Fair is.
Yes. It always happens around the second weekend of the Frankfurt Book Fair, and it's on the Saturdays. And usually we have a meeting on Friday evening and another meeting on Saturday evening. And, lots of readings, lots of panels. Well, it's more readings, it's not really panels. And it's not a big convention as they go, but there's 300, 400 people coming. Some of them actually cosplay, not a whole lot, but and they hand out the German Fantasy Awards there, which is it's an online voting thing, and I don't see myself ever winning anything there, but that's the highlight of the evening, that they're handing out these awards. And so it's been 3 years since I've been, so it'll be fun to go and reconnect. And I need to start preparing the trip. I need to start booking accommodation and all that. But
oh yeah.
So I'm trying to be low key. My main goal is to actually keep writing mostly every day, and see where that takes me. Just keep working on my stories and just keep getting stuff done.
So I am going to write this up and put it on the show notes, what we've committed to doing for the rest of the year. So
yeah, so for me it's basically finish and publish one book, write that short story, which I do hope is going to promote my series a little more, if that anthology takes off. We plan to publish that anthology around Christmas, so that might be good promotion.
Oh, good.
And just see what happens. Just keep writing, keep doing the stuff.
Yeah. So
stay healthy. That's one of the.
I generally am the healthiest person around here. I generally don't get the flu. I get a few colds. Of course, since I've given up running, I suppose that my system isn't being burned out as often as it has been.
Yeah.
But yeah, this kind of thing, this is extremely atypical for me. So yes, stay healthy. And if your toe hurts or any other part of your body hurts, go see a doctor if you possibly can. Because I literally thought I was just going to keep my foot elevated and maybe ice it. And that would have done nothing for this condition. So.
And the tea tree oil, you can use it in addition. It's a pretty powerful antibiotic, actually. But
I don't know if it's an antibiotic. I know that it's an antifungal.
Yes. And it is. And it's an it also kills insects. And I think it won't hurt putting it on there, but it probably won't solve the problem if it's getting underneath the first layer of the skin, because
this is in the skin. This is in the subcutaneous tissue.
Yeah. Tea tree oil is not going to cut it. Yeah.
Which is why, folks, you can't rely on the web to tell you what's going on. It's.
Do your research and use common sense. I mean, there's so much going on around the internet that is just so stupid. I'm serious. I mean, the whole thing on vaccines is just.
Oh, don't even get me started. Well, there was the article published 2 weeks ago, and this is a universally reviled article, so I'm pretty pleased about that. That just made me say, in the immortal words of Cartman from South Park, "Screw you guys, I'm going home." It's I don't know what episode that's from because I don't watch South Park, but I've just heard about that gesture, and I'm like, yes, that is how I feel. Going home. So
yeah, it's like, I mean, again, this is what you need to do as an author. You need to be educated. You need to know your science. You need to know your history. You need to be aware of what's going on. You need to be aware of what's ideology, of what's scientific fact. You need to be aware that that people can be totally wrong about facts and believe that anyway. I think that if you, like, I use all my archaeology background to create a fantasy world that actually is not a glorified Middle Ages romance thing, and it so pays off to read and research and do the work. I mean, figure out how the human body works. Figure out how much you can hurt someone before they die. Yeah. And it's a lot less than most people think, and it's a lot less than action movies show you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I mean, there's a time and a place for things, but yeah, you know, I mean, it's kind of fun with Die Hard or whatever, where it's like, you know, it's the Energizer Bunny. No matter what you keep throwing at him, he keeps going. Yes. But yeah, there's enough already. At this point, they have internal bleeding. Let them go find a doctor.
And I mean, if it's part of the genre, you can do it. I mean, if it's like this action over the top genre, go and have fun with it. But
I have two recommendations. Again, trapped on the couch watching television. For Netflix, I don't know if this is available on Netflix overseas, but I just finished watching Bloodline, which was a little slow to get going, but I think is really worth putting in the time. A story of a sort of a Southern Gothic tale of a family with secrets down in Key West in Florida. And the other one was, and we're still in the middle of this, but many people I know highly recommend it. And I think I've finally gotten to the part of the show where I'm on board with what's going on. And that's Sense8, also a Netflix series, which is a science fiction series about 8 people whose experience of reality start to overlap. And it's worldwide. There's somebody in Nigeria, somebody in India, somebody in Berlin, San Francisco, Chicago. And it's the first couple of episodes, I'm like, I'm not too certain about what's going on here, but we finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm on board with this trip. So I recommend that as well, particularly for the unusual storytelling. You know, they're not holding your hand, or they don't hold your hand until the 4th episode. The first couple of episodes, it's like stuff is happening. You either figure it out or you don't.
Yeah.
Which is really brave.
Yes.
And it's something on a scale that is not usually seen on television. So.
That's interesting.
So my television recommendations, if they're available there in Germany.
They might be, actually.
Yeah.
And I've been researching romance because that's the sideline I'm writing. And I've been reading a couple of romance books just to figure out the patterns, to figure out what I like in them and what I don't like in them. And I read one that some people have called a dark romance or not romance. It's called The Lily Brand by Sandra Schwab, who is a German who writes in English, just like I am. And I'll spell it out for you for the show notes.
Okay.
And it was fascinating for me because of my coaching background. It's basically it's set in the 1815, 1817, at the end of the Napoleonic Wars. And there's 2 people who get totally traumatized, and they meet again, and their lives are entwined. And it's the story of how they overcome this trauma and actually open up enough to find love. which is romance. I mean, we know a true romance story has a happy ever after ending, and I'm not going to hide that from you. It has that ending, and some of that is a bit forced, but what I really, really liked and what really fascinated me is how she used what we now know about trauma and about dissociation and how people deal with it, that she puts that into her story. And the story is really about how people possibly process trauma and overcome it. And in trauma, people are caught in that moment, in that time where they got traumatized. And, or at least parts of their thinking, parts of their mind, their bodies are stuck in there. And to move out of that, actually come back into living fully, wholeheartedly, that was quite well done in that story. I was absolutely fascinated reading that. And again, that's what I'm trying to, the whole point I'm trying to make, research your stuff. Don't just do this kind of thing to people and pretend they can move on just as they were before. They don't. They are not. So it's awesome to know these things and know what you're doing to your characters and put it into books. Imagine that. A Regency, well, it's before Regency, but imagine that, a historical romance with an absolutely modern topic. So that was pretty awesome. I enjoyed reading that.
Okay. Yeah, send me the link for that.
I'll let you know. Yeah, that was really awesome. All right.
Yes, well, we have reached the end of another hour. And boy, I'm sure hope I'm standing by next week. I'm not used to sitting for this long.
Yeah, it is a difference.
Having the treadmill desk has really trained me to stand all day, and I feel really weak sitting.
Yeah, I can totally imagine.
Yes. So thank you for joining us for another 21st Century Writer podcast. My name is Diane Patterson.
And I'm Hannah Steenbock.
And we will see you next week. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.